let's move on to number 3. And why don't let's see, number 3. Number 3, as you can see on your sheet, has to do with end dependency on mass inspection, and instead learn how to build it right and produce evidence that it was built right. And that is going to take about 10 minutes. And then immediately after that, Rich Kleinhamble is going to do an example on information controls and PACE as an example related to this point number 3. What I was thinking of watching is that the fundamental idea is to get information from the process and to control it and to hopefully improve the quality. And some of you may have been overwhelmed by all the technology and the statistics and the computers and everything else, but I can assure you that that basic idea can be used on all processes everywhere, but the kind of statistical methods and kind of technology in terms of computers and that kind of thing can be much simpler and has to be much simpler, for it to be used widely. And there are actually advantages in other processes where you don't use these kind of very sophisticated methods, because it would be very difficult, I would imagine, in this particular example, for someone to drastically alter the system. It'd be too expensive to make drastic changes in that system. Maybe in the long term, with redesign and so on, that can be done. Whereas with simpler kind of work situations and so on, sometimes you can actually come up with an idea that's based on some data that you've collected with more humble kind of methods, and you can actually change the system a lot. So, there's sort of trade-offs in this whole business. With big, complicated pieces of capital equipment, you can justify using very sophisticated statistical methods and technology and so on, computers, to do this kind of thing. But sometimes there are limitations as to how much you can really alter that basic system. Whereas on the other hand, with simpler systems, you can use simpler methods, and sometimes you can make drastic changes to the system. I kept thinking of these mechanics, union members, who work in a maintenance garage at City Madison, and I kept thinking, they're doing the same thing, except they don't use this kind of sophisticated methodology, but they really do believe in collecting statistics, getting data, analyzing problems, figuring out how to make things better, improving things, and changing things, and coming up with their own ideas. And sometime I'd like to tell you more about that, but not now. What I would like to do with the time we have before lunch is to cycle back to the discussions you had about your customers and what they wanted and so on, which shows up in point number 1 of Deming, when he says the customer is the most important part of the production line. And to see if we can't get some kind of closure on that. I have this fantasy that, out of this group we could have 2 kind of hams come up and do a role-playing thing of a customer and a supplier within P&G, and the kind of dialogue that goes on, and the typical kind of problems that exist going back and forth. If there are 2 people who could, one be a consumer and one be the supplier, and just go through a little dialogue of typical kind of problems that do come up in P&G. That would be lovely. I don't know whether anybody's willing just to jump up here and do that. But if there are 2 people who would like to do that, one be the supplier and one be the consumer, that might be entertaining and also educational for us just to talk about. But if there isn't Anyway, in the next few minutes, if anybody feels inspired and has a buddy who will do this, I would like to sit down and listen to it just so I could hear about some of the things that go on in TNT. But failing that realization of this fantasy, I have a few people actually doing that. To return to those points you wrote down about what are my products and who are my customers and what do they want, and with that question you didn't spend any time with, writing down answers to, namely, how do you know that's what they want? And then some of the questions that spin out of that about, are there things that you could do better? And do you see opportunities around P&G where people could get that communication going better and to talk to the customers within P&G and getting some kind of information that would help the suppliers do a better job of supplying the consumers, or working with your suppliers and looking the other way here is, I would hope that someone would have something to just share with this whole group about any particular points that came up in your discussion at your table.
Well, we just were talking here in value, and my responsibility is maintenance over the lines, and I was just thinking that, well, my product would be reliability to the equipment, spare parts, machine upgrades, listening to what the operators have to say, and then acting on it. And it's kind of difficult. And then some of the wants, we learned, dependability, reliability, listen to what's wrong with the equipment and doing it. And I think there's a lot of improvements in Downey, because we really don't have good systems to get the first-hand information from the operators that are operating the equipment. It's, we go to a morning meeting, and we have relief operators up there, rather than the people that are running the equipment 24 hours a day. And then the people that are maintaining the equipment 24 hours a day are not at that meeting either. It's just the managers and relief operators. So you really don't have the information you need to know what to go out and fix. And I don't know, that just came apparent listening to this.
But then you're saying these meetings, it would be good to have maybe a better mix of folks in there.
Yeah.
And one word for that might be diversity, which is up on the wall here someplace. Anybody else? Yeah, but no, I don't know how far this will stretch.
I work for the electrical department, and my customers are operators on the production line. And one of the interesting needs that was shared with us here was the fact that the operators felt a need, the electrical group, to make the technologies less exclusive, get away from the black box syndrome, help them understand the technology and how it's applied and how to use it effectively. And I never viewed that as a need that my customers have.
That's fun. One of the things that came up yesterday was the business about knowing your business. That's one of the principles, or what was that label? Anyway, to get to understand your business better and to get the bigger picture. And one of the things we found in Madison with some, there's a problem in the city of Madison in that there's some landfills, and then there's methane that builds up in these former landfill sites, and you have to monitor the methane because it can produce dangerous kind of situations. And we actually had a house blow up on the west side of Madison, no one was hurt. But it got the attention of the engineers and others in the city to say, we should be paying more attention to how we monitor these landfill sites. And one of the things that came out of the meeting with the engineers and the people who actually made the measurements was the people who were making the measurements did not really understand what the whole problem was. I mean, they didn't have the big picture. No one ever told them. And when they had meetings and they said, we're hired and then we're told, here's this piece of equipment, you get in a truck, you drive on a plain site, you find these things, you poke it in there and you make a measurement, you write it down. That's all I knew. And they didn't know the big picture, and what they said was they wanted to know more about what this whole thing was about. And so the managers, that was news to them. I didn't know that. But these people really wanted to know. But it obviously makes it possible for these workers to do a better job if they know what the bigger picture is. And they wanted to know the bigger picture. And no one had told them. And they never thought to ask either. Anybody else? Well, did anybody come up with any kind of ideas about how things could be improved with your customers? I mean, any kind of ideas you had about how you could find out more or work with them better, or get some information that you're not getting now? Anybody hit upon any ideas along that line? Or are all the systems perfect?
I've got I've seen the learning from the value organization too, and one of the ideas that I had coming out of the videotape on the grocery store example was that it would be neat to get some consumers into the plant and have some roundtable discussions and give them a free cake of brownie or something to motivate them to get there, but we could learn a lot directly what the consumer wants versus through our systems currently of consumer comments and this type of thing, which are fairly indirect.
Yeah, I mean, getting to the final customer. Yeah. What would happen if you actually did that kind of thing? I mean, I'm not thinking just Bounty, but everybody here. If you actually got a group like that from the customers within P&G and had a meeting, I mean, would that produce anything or nothing, or do you do it already, or what?
I could keep pushing people to do it.
One thing that went through my mind about this point about mass inspections and trying to build quality in by inspection, which is impossible, is that Deming has this hippie way of putting a lot of the problems along those lines, and what he says is, let's play American industry, and we'll make toast, and I'll burn and you free. It's a very interesting kind of image. But in terms of the image also, and the journey and traveling someplace and so on, I was struck by the comment attributed to Deming in this last presentation about how he doesn't expect people to go driving in the dark with no lights. And so you do have to have some data and some inspection, which is not lots and lots and lots of it. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Yeah.
With the store, and a lot of times when you ask for input on something, and
get a large amount of people, like say 120 people, you get about 120 different inputs. And how, is there any, I mean, some people are gonna have an idea that's just not practical.
Okay, the question, yeah. Now, the problem is, if you ask 120 people, you may get 100 different answers about what's to be done, and
No, you can't please all the people.
yeah, you can't please all the people all the time, so then, what do you do? And that is, I mean, the professionals who worry about that are in market research, so, I mean, they're supposed to be able to sort out, sort out those kind of questions. And it does get to be a question, sometimes of, there's no way with this one product that we're gonna satisfy all these people, but then you get into business about, well, maybe this group of customers could be taken care of with a different kind of product, and then we can satisfy these with our current product, and then you get into, those kind of things, but there is no simple answer to the fact that all these different customers can be saying all these different things, and you just try to satisfy, as many of them as possible. But when you do it in terms of products, then you do have to produce one kind of product, and there's value coming out, and there are some variations in terms of, the decorations you put on or not, and how many are in the package, but that's, there's a limited kind of range you can go and still have it be valued. But in terms of services, sometimes you can more easily adapt them, so, if there are a number of different kinds of customers, you can segment it and say, well, these kind of customers want us to do something a little different in terms of service, and it's easier to kind of be flexible sometimes with services than with products. With a product, sometimes it's a big investment to decide to have two products instead of one. That's all the complication and everything else that goes along with that. But one of the big advantages to talking about customers inside P&G, generally you don't have 120. Oh, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I'm just thinking big roles going around, parent roles and things like that, that the customer is, it's just virtually one customer there. Maybe with some different voices, so, same place. Yeah, sometimes what people find when they go check with the customers, they find out that the customers, that you do run into this kind of problem, but the customers are supposed to be speaking with one voice because it is like an agency in a government or a department in a company. And if you get all this different kind of responses when you say what do you want, and you get all these different things from all these different people, then you feed that back to the manager over there and say, in some kind of way, you tell them, look, your act isn't together because we're supposed to supply you with something, and we'd like to do it, but we're not getting a consistent kind of response from you people, and you have to get your act together and tell us what it is you really want. Because, that comes up as well. All right. Oh, yes.
As you're talking, you're trusting the person. How does it find the test? What the product? Yes, next.
Well, you need both, but the thing you really have to keep in mind is the final customer, and not get that lost in all this rigmarole. I mean, you really have to stay focused on the final customer, and that's not as easy to do as people say. And it is possible to get in trouble by talking with your next immediate customer in P&G and saying, what do you want? And they can tell you very clearly what they want, and then when you give it to them, that part is sort of fixed up, and you both feel happy about it. But what you've just done in making some change to make the next customer happier is the ultimate customer is not happy. So you have to be aware of that, of that particular problem. Yes.
Suppose you are a manager and you were considering changing a raw material, and if you did switch this raw material, you'd save your department $300,000 in a year, but your quality would decrease 2%. What would you do?
Okay, we're gonna save lots and lots of money, $300,000 by switching to a supplier and a supply which is a lower quality. So, what do? Well, see, the purest kind of, quality above all else and cost takes the hindmost, and I don't care what cost, but just say, no, you have to stick with a high quality, supplier. Well, I mean, at some point, it really does make sense to go with a lower quality supplier. It was a huge, huge savings. But you have to be very careful about how you calculate up all those costs. Because a lot of times when you buy a lower quality raw material coming in, and you're going to save $300,000, and you're going to make it up, and it's going to be, in the end, a great benefit for P&G or whatever, you have to really worry about all those hidden costs, like how much time is spent trying to handle this stuff that's not as good, and what are all the consequences really of that? And it's so easy to lose sight of all those costs. I mean, somebody will have to spend a lot of weekends, somebody else will have to spend a lot of time, someone else will have a lot of money spent, when all this whole big bunch comes in is defective, and you can't use it, and there's no other stuff you can use, and actually things have to shut down for a day or two till you get all that straightened out, and, all those kind of costs that have to be taken into account. So, to go to a lower quality, supplier, you really have to think very, very carefully, but sometimes it can be justified. And in fact, some companies go that way on purpose because they've improved their system so much that they know that now, or they may design a whole new system. I mean, I realize that's not what you're talking about, but it is possible to design a whole new system and get it all set up. And it's designed on purpose to take advantage of lower quality input, and you can still maintain the quality output. I mean, that is possible. And by redesign of existing equipment, sometimes you can put in lower quality stuff and still have it come out to be the same quality. So, I guess in a nutshell what I would say, if it looks like you're going to make huge savings by going with a lower quality raw material, that you have to very, very carefully evaluate what it is you're doing and try to make sure that you're not ignoring some costs that are going to come along, and it gets very tricky because you have to anticipate all kinds of problems that are going to happen and you're not sure what they're going to be exactly. So, but what you can do is to look back at the Santayana principle, and then you've been to Duran's seminars, Joseph Duran, he talks about the Santayana principle. And Santayana said things like, a fanatic is someone who redoubles their efforts when everyone else has forgotten about the cause. And he's also the one who said that those people who don't understand history are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And so he thinks that what companies should do is set up some historians who have authority from top management and to go around and poke around some past projects and to look into questions like this in the past when decisions were made of this kind, and to have authority to go into everywhere and to get the costs and to get them all together and put together the whole history and to get some of these histories out so that then you can see what the consequences have been from the past and to try to learn from that what's happened in the past. Okay, so you can, I don't know of any company that has historians of that kind, but you can imagine doing that. Okay, we're supposed to have lunch about this time, and a certain process would start to happen to some of you when you run on airplanes or in hotels or perhaps being served lunch. You wanted to ask yourself, isn't there a better way? So, I would like to think about the process of serving lunch and to ask yourself whether there are any problems that you noticed, and then ask yourself what were the causes of the problems, and then somebody in the back of the room is pointing to an individual and saying, but we all know it's not individuals. And then there are solutions. What I would like you to do as a task for 15 minutes is to get into your roots and actually address these big questions. To talk about any problems that you notice, and then to address the question of what are the causes, and I really would like you to address that, of the causes, because it's by fixing the causes that you come up with. I mean, a good solution is one that takes care of the causes. And the point here is that what I have found and other people have found is that when people see a problem, they immediately jump to solutions. And although it takes more discipline and it seems a longer way around to do it, it actually pays off many times, and I don't know whether it will pay off this time, to not jump immediately to solutions, but to spend some time trying to figure out what the root causes were, and then to go to solutions. Right. Now, there's, some of you know about fishbone charts, right? Cause and effect diagrams. How many people know about those? Okay, well, that's great. All right, well, almost everybody does. One thing you might do in these 15 minutes is to actually put down, the main problem as being where it points to, and then to see if you can fix up, and to come up with some causes and put them in a fishbone chart. And if somebody comes up with a particularly good one, then we can share it with the whole group. So why don't we take about 15 minutes for you just to go through that? What you have up here is a cause and effect diagram or a fishbone, and the problem identified is people home for lunch, which seems a lot of people. That is the problem. And there are, if you don't know this yet, you can read them as well as I can. There's about setup, and this is about menu, and what is this? Socializing while selecting food, and the idea of showing you these is this for people who've never seen a fishbone, and they can see what it is. The problem is lunch ran over half an hour. That's up to the top. Only one serving table and only 2 lines. Too many people and too many selections, and people too slow at lunch. Too short. And poor planning and no trays and trips and communication between planners and servers. And then there's solutions down here about less selections and more lines and no soup and trays and pre-made sandwiches and food served by someone and no free lunch. The layer is too long to serve again, and there are lots of things. So here, this one over here is too wide of a selection. Slow logistics, so on. Now, I'm wondering if it is to focus on the solutions, or just a little bit, if the people designated as spokespersons at these tables, well, I guess we don't need to stay focused on solutions if you really want to say something about causes or the problem, or whatever. But there is actually a chance that tomorrow, something will happen as a result of ideas that you people have generated. So, I guess for this, the persons designated as spokespersons, if you write down solutions on a piece of paper and give them to Mike Schuster, wherever he is, then we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, do any of the spokespeople want to share with the rest of us any solutions? Now remember, we're gonna have lunch, tomorrow. And he said, this is your chance. Wow, that's tremendous. I don't think Dr. Deming himself could have done better with coming up with these ideas. And, I like Schuster is around here. I know if you do have some of these ideas you want to feed to them, then we'll just see what happens. So. Oh, no, it's just that they will be giving you these suggestions, so, oh, you can Okay, folks, Dr. Deming is waiting for us, to go with, point number 4. One thing that you should find on your table is a piece of paper, and at the bottom of which it says Tom Jones, and at the top it says subject, suppliers, about substrate. And we'll be hearing from Tom in a second. One thing that I would like to mention about this lowest bidder business that will come up again is that last year for the 2 semesters of the school year, I was working half a day a week with the city of Madison. And because someone, namely David Miller, took a 2-day Deming course or seminar. He attended a seminar that Dr. Deming gave in Madison in the summer of 1983. And after he finished that, he thought, well, these management ideas are very sensible, and there's no reason why they should only be used in industry. And shortly after that, and his realization that they made a lot of sense and they could be applied other places, he was hired as the mayor's economic development aide. So he worked in the mayor's office in Madison, and he kept telling the mayor that these methods should be used to run the city of Madison. And the mayor listened, and eventually the mayor actually went to a 4-day Deming seminar. And one thing that I learned in working with the city last year was the biggest complaint that everybody had was buying from the lowest bidder. And there were all kinds of complaints. I mean, just everywhere. Everybody said it to anybody. I sure was saying every place all across the city that buying from the lowest bidder just caused problems for them on the job. And then the question is, well, why not do something about it then? Why not buy from the lowest bidder? Well, there were laws and regulations and rules and all that, and you had to. Well, then somebody finally said, who makes these rules anyway? And what are they? And why don't we change our own rules then so we don't have to buy from the lowest bidder? And the city attorney actually checked around, and one of the thoughts was it was somehow mandated by state law. But they found that wasn't true, and in fact, it wasn't true. We didn't have to buy from the lowest bidder, but everybody was just assuming that had to be that way. So, anyway, now they're turning around to not buy from the lowest bidder. But of course, it's simple to say that, but then the purchasing people have to, know a lot more than they have to know if they're just buying on price. But quite a few purchasing people, I don't know whether there are any purchasing folks in this room, but they feel rather insulted with the way they're characterized, as all they do is, put out the bids and look for the lowest to buy, and that's not what purchasing is. It is more involved than that. And they have brains, and they can figure out things. And like the rest of us, if they're learning more about this, and then learning more about, how they can do their job better, and if, that things can move in that direction, and and what I found in talking with purchasing people is they want to move in this direction, and they would like to do it, and they want to learn more about how to do it, but they don't buy the way Deming just, his caricature of how it goes. That's not how it goes in most purchasing departments. So anyway, the city of Madison wants to move away from that. Another thing that it just comes to my mind that isn't directly connected with that, but is also, well, I think it's amazing if this thing goes through the city council, but the resolution is that what should be passed in Madison, and this has been written up and it's been talked, and people in the unions have been talked to, and people in city government and city council have been talked to. And the resolution essentially says that if people come up with bright ideas about how to improve quality and productivity in the city, which results in not requiring so many people to do a certain job, that none of those people are going to lose their jobs. I mean, that they will be moved to someplace else, maybe, but nobody's going to be put out of work because there's some bright ideas that people have. Because that's one of the surest ways to kill this whole thing we're talking about, is to say, okay, everybody come up with good ideas, and then they come up with good ideas, and then they're fired, or if not them, their friends, or somebody else, that they don't have jobs anymore because they figured out how to do a job with only 3 people who used to take 5. So, in Deming's latest version of his book, he has it spelled out very clearly that one of the things that the intern has to do is somehow address that problem. Because if people come up with ideas, if you're asking people for their best ideas and they come up with the best ideas and then that results in people being fired, then it's just not going to work. That's all. And the best ideas will result in some jobs being done by fewer people. So, I mean, it's a tough issue to face, but it's got to be faced, and you have to think about it. Okay, Tom Jones has an example.
I asked that during lunch we pass off this handout, so hopefully folks can follow along. A couple concerns I had when Mike asked me to share this case study that I wanted to express. One is that this is just one example to work with suppliers. I know there's a lot more out there. Hopefully this one can offer some learning, as well as we're looking for ideas on how to make this even better system. The other concern is that while this program has a lot of Tom Jones' footprints on it, it's also got a lot of other people contributing. One person I wanted to call out in particular, Cheryl Gantz, who has a day-to-day responsibility and has been moving us day-to-day, week-to-week to continue to improve. Also help outside of manufacturing from our suppliers, which is very interesting and rewarding, and from our purchasing agents. Let's start. Little background. Bounce substrate is a raw material for us. In fact, it's a big one. We spend $15 million a year on just substrate. It comes from 3 suppliers that have a total of 5 machines producing substrate. You can picture a substrate machine as similar to a small paper machine. We use rayon fiber. It's a non-woven process, air-laid with latex binding. And the product that comes off of it looks very similar to a parent roll on a paper machine. And we buy it by the truckload. The 3 suppliers that I mentioned have 5 production lines. They also have very different price characteristics. In 1984, as we started to implement some of the T2A principles, we had supplier A looking like a bad guy. They were up there about $100 a roll more expensive than our other 2 suppliers. And their overall average of $1,900 a roll starts to add up when you think of the 8,000 rolls a year that we use. That's where we come up with about $15 million. We got started really some folks coming out of SMQI starting to apply those principles. We started looking at what variation we had in our process on some key problems. We had a grade 1 problem in coating ratio. That was by far our biggest grade 1 problem. And for the first time we started looking at that by substrate supply. Not too surprising to us now, we saw that there was a 3-to-1 difference in grade 1s by supplier. One supplier was giving us 3 times the number of grade 1s as we were getting with another supplier. We didn't know that until we started looking at the data. Similarly, we looked at our rejects from the packaging lines back to the impregnation. As we looked at that, we saw that we were actually seeing difference in reject levels of 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio, depending on which supplier we were coating. similar to seeing a difference in bounty rejects back to paper making depending on which craft supplier the paper machine is using. It came as quite a surprise to us, but as we started to implement that data, a new relationship emerged. Remember how supplier A looked from a price standpoint? What we rolled on top of that was the total cost. You can still see the same price bar graph by supplier and overall average, but what we've added to that is the incremental cost or manufacturing cost. Rolling in the quality impacts and the runnability impacts, you can see that supplier A's manufacturing cost is actually a third of supplier B's. And the good guys, bad guys, suppliers relationship changes. Now, being aggressive sorts, we immediately jumped on that and said, let's eliminate supplier B. That didn't go over real big, and we had one of our next learnings, and that's that you need to form a partnership with your purchasing folks. In a painful way, we got to that point though, and we got some good results once we did that. The joining up process with purchasing looked like setting some common strategies, some common ground rules for how we were going to do business allocations. Some of that emerged as we shared this data with purchasing was that we changed the ground rules. We were no longer going to purchase on price, we were going to purchase on total cost. When we changed the allocations for the next year, we actually moved more of our business to supplier A away from B, even though A was a higher price. We didn't eliminate B, as it turned out we didn't have the volume to be able to do that anyway. We needed at least some from B in the short term. We also have purchases agreement that together with manufacturing, we start sharing this data with our suppliers in greater detail than you see here. Each of these incremental costs by supplier, what a supplier would see is that incremental cost broken out by key factor compared to what the overall supplier average was. So each supplier knew how they were doing compared to the overall average. They knew how they stood. They were in meetings with us in purchasing, the folks with the checkbook. And it really made a difference that you had purchasing there because as suppliers think about it, those are the ones that have the checkbook. In those meetings, we laid out to the suppliers that in the coming years we were going to continue to manage our business, our allocations based on total costs. That was really energizing from a supplier standpoint. Once they knew the ground rules, they went to work on reducing that cost. In the past, the ground rule had always been price. Why work on their impact on us? Before I show you the next graph of how we're doing at 85, I want to point out some of the rest we did. Once we got the suppliers' attention to that partnership, the suppliers have really been in a cooperative mood. They realize that building their business is going to depend on their reducing their incremental costs as well as their price. So we've done a series of activities, some of which I have on the outline, mostly around training, communication. We've had teams of our bounce makers and quality technician go to each of the supplier plants, conducting crew training meetings on just how we use their substrate in our process. That consisted of about 3-hour meetings, and 13 of them. It's rather exhausting, but it's really paying out. We also had those suppliers come into our plant, conducting similar training meetings. In the past, we were seeing the sales reps quite often. Now what we're seeing are their technical people, their production workers, their production management people, and their problem solving. We're getting a deeper cut at their willingness to work on the problems. This is the most fun graph. This is what we're seeing in 85 so far. Represents the last 10 months. You can see the same 1984 bar graphs, but what I want to show is the improvement each supplier has made in 85. Through working with them, defining the ground rules, we're seeing big progress. Supplier B has cut their incremental cost by over half. Supplier C has cut theirs by well over half. And A has about held their own, but they were in the best shape to begin with. The difference between where we were incremental costs last year and this year is about $50 a roll. On top of that, we've seen price improvements. Roll all that together and it's $1.4 million a year, and we're just not done. We've got more work to do. spend fund, and it's gonna continue to be because we're now suppliers, purchasing and manufacturing all working off the same ground rules, total cost approach. Some of the things we want to do next are listed under number 4. There's 2 key thoughts. We've got some more learnings yet about what goes into that total cost. We don't do anything yet with some elements of our scrap accounting. As we get those better, we'll be able to roll that into our total cost picture too. As we've done audits, spot checks, we've seen big differences in our scrap numbers by supplier. We also haven't dealt yet from a cost standpoint with delivery performance. Things like, does a supplier deliver the exact quantity asked for, exactly when he asked for it? That's become more important to us as we've reduced our inventories to get them closer to a just-in-time production. We're looking for ideas on how to get that rolled into our total cost calculations as well. Lastly, we want to reduce our complexity. I mentioned we had 5 supplier lines spread across the 3 suppliers. We see in this upcoming allocation, not only moving business to our lower total cost suppliers, but also moving it in a way that will reduce the total number of supplier lines that we're getting it from. Certainly down to 4, and then 5 makes sense, perhaps even 3. Been fun. Questions?
What's the reason for going down to 4?
What we see is variability. Even within, while the variability from supplier to supplier is reduced, it's still there as we switch from one supply source to another. And we see almost as much variation from one line to another as a supplier. 12-bait machine doesn't run Charmin exactly the way 13-bait machine does. That kind of relationship. As well as it takes us longer, more energy on our part to service 5 supply lines than does 4. Those training sessions I talk about, that kind of thing.
So there's some variations in your specifications. How did you go about analyzing it?
We've chosen to ignore them. Seriously. Almost all the product we're getting is within our specs. None of this variation that we were seeing could be accounted for by deviation from specification. You can say our specifications are too loose or didn't cover this or that, but they become meaningless once we're all working off the common objective of making the stuff run through our process and giving us good quality. Suppliers and us both got the same endpoint. We don't need rigid specifications. So we're really not putting energy into specs.
The supplier gave you good quality product, it was lead you making good quality bounce. How did you calculate the total cost of say having a whole field of grade 2 bounces with grade 3 or grade 4? How did they number on that?
We did some fairly arbitrary things, but we made it consistent across how we apply it to each supplier. We took just the grade 1s, and we said, we've got an equation that I don't have in my mind, but we applied, if we've got, say, 1% grade 1s, we'll figure how many customers we're going to impact by that, what percentage of them are going to choose not to buy Thomas again, what that means to our profits. And it turned out to be a fairly sizable portion of this. Recognize it's arbitrary. Thank you.
So,